This is the Nostalgic Future Podcast, where the past is the only way forward.
We're two guys in our 40s watching the world pass us by. And we know the only way we'll ever be relevant again is to somehow convince everyone to be as passionate as we are about our pop culture obsessions.
We are your hosts, Joe Cook and Chris Marchand, and today is our In the News update, Warner Brothers Discovery and Beer Pong with Post Malone.
So we're here to discuss something that we can almost barely have grips on, Joe, which is a merger with Warner Brothers and Discovery. So it's this big corporate thing that's happening. I just feel like, I'm a peasant and the king is doing something in the kingdom. I don't know. I mean, what do I know what the king does in the castle up there? I'm just down here trying to get the crops to grow. I'm down here in the muck. But we hear about this merger. We want to talk about it today, mainly because how it relates to things we've discussed this year so far in previous episodes regarding Batman and the DC universe. And what's funny about it all is, okay, you hear about the corporate entities, you hear about the money, which is really beyond me. I don't even know what to say. They talk about tax write-offs and all of this stuff. But then you start to hear about the mess of what does this mean about Batman? And how is Batgirl going to fit into it? And then there's this stuff with Ezra Miller and The Flash, which is highly problematic on a number of levels. Joe, you said one thing to me that was really funny, which I think you were half serious. And when you're half serious, you actually kind of mean it. You said, and this is, I think, specifically in regards to what they're going to do with Michael Keaton's roles coming up with Batman. You said, they're ruining our childhoods. What do they think they're doing? Now, what did you mean when you said that? Well, they're ruining our childhoods.
It was in jest. I mean, I'm not one of those, George Lucas ruined my childhood people. So, I mean, in all seriousness, I have been waiting for 30 years for Michael Keaton to return as Batman, and it's not looking good right now. And I by no means understand all of the minutia and all of the, fine details, with this merger or what's going on. But what I'm seeing, I'm not loving. And maybe it's purely, it may have far worse ramifications than I can even understand. But I'm just looking at Michael Keaton returning as Batman right now. And, the Batgirl movie has been canceled. That was scheduled, I believe, to be the first one out, with him in return. Though it was originally supposed to be The Flash. That's been delayed a whole bunch of times. And I don't know. The Flash problems, clearly, that has more to do with, I think, Ezra Miller and the troubles that they're having other than this merger. But I'm wondering, how is this merger going to affect that? I should say Michael Keaton was scheduled to appear in 3 upcoming DC films: Batgirl, The Flash, and Aquaman. And Aquaman 2 might be the most perplexing one to me, that his cameo has been scrapped. And I think he filmed it, from what I understand. And he's been replaced with your favorite Batman, Ben Affleck.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, and again, reading the articles about Aquaman 2, there were some test screenings and people were confused. What's Michael Keaton's Batman showing up here? That's actually a valid question, but that maybe demonstrates the mess that the WB has gotten themselves into in general. It's who approved that? I mean, that type of thing had to be written years ago and decisions made.
And my understanding of this, I guess this is what I was trying to say. I think it's just that their schedule has got all thrown out of whack and all of their plans have been messed up. I believe the Flash film was supposed to introduce him back into this whole universe, and then it would make sense in Batgirl and Aquaman. And because the Flash has been delayed so much, it's been a little problematic to have Michael Keaton just showing up.
Okay, so I can understand the Flash is an interesting character, not being an expert on the Flash, but knowing how his speed, there's multiverse potential for the Flash as a character. I'm down with it. I'm into the whole multiverse thing. Hey, by the way, side note, did you ever get a chance to see Everything Everywhere All at Once, this film that's come out this year?
No, but I was actually planning on renting it this weekend.
Joe, do it tonight. Do what you got to do. It's a very, it might be like the defining multiverse. Like even Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, Everything Everywhere All at Once. I mean, it's just brilliant. It'll get you to think. It's very moving. It's fun.
Evelyn, I'm not your husband. I'm another version of him from another universe. I'm here because we need your help. Across the multiverse, I've seen thousands of Evelyns. You can access all their memories, their emotions, even their skills. There's a great evil spreading throughout the many verses. And you may be your only chance of stopping it.
You know, it is at the top of my list of movies to see. And I will say, you know, I've gotten lazy, Chris. I haven't been to a movie theater in ages. I've gotten really reliant on streaming, you know, and even with movies that are, you know, in the theater, they come to streaming so fast now, and it's cheaper and easier. And I've gotten a little lazy. I will tease that there is a huge cinematic event that is happening that is guaranteed to get me back in the theater, but we'll talk about that later in this show.
That's going to come up later. I mean, this is the kind of cinematic event that I think the masses are going to they're going to flock to this, and it'll go down as one of the biggest movie events in history, I'm pretty sure.
Endgame, Schmendgame. This is the event. This is the place to be, but we'll talk about that later.
Yeah. Oh, James Cameron's Avatar 2 coming to theaters. No. This one is going to top it for sure. 2022 will be remembered for this film.
Yeah, please, Avatar.
Yeah, I mean, this has better pyrotechnics and special effects, I'm sure. Okay, so we'll get to that in a minute. Yeah.
And all practical effects. No CGI.
Yeah. And that's how well they pulled it off, that's for sure.
Have we teased this well enough? All right.
Oh my god, they will be anticipating. They'll be what could these guys possibly be talking about? Where were we?
Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Yeah. I would just say that's a film that people need to watch. I will say this about Everything Everywhere All at Once. It's not exactly family friendly depending on how young your kids are. I mean, there's some pretty racy stuff in there. It's an adult film in that sense. I kind of wish there was a PG-13 version of it, but they went all in. They got real with some of the life stuff and sexual stuff and vulgarity, but it was fun nonetheless. Hey, this is what I was really trying to say. I understand Michael Keaton showing up, maybe in some kind of cameo role, but the whole thing is a little bit confusing. You have your Justice League, you know, Jason Momoa. I get it. So I guess I understand Affleck coming back, but they also just rebooted the Batman, and they even have a Joker. I think we have like 4 universes now.
I mean, right now, currently, there are 3 actors playing Joker, correct?
Oh, there's another Joker. Yeah. Where does our cult leader guy? What's his name? What's our cult leader Joker?
Jared Leto. We got Jared Leto's Joker.
Yeah, where does his universe fall? I don't even know.
He's in the Snyderverse.
Is he really? Okay.
Yeah, he's the Joker of the Snyderverse, which though is confusing because I'm hearing the Snyderverse is dead, yet the Flash is still the same Flash from the Snyderverse. Wonder Woman's the same Wonder Woman. Aquaman's the same Aquaman. Like Ben Affleck, they're bringing him into Aquaman. So how is the Snyderverse dead? Is it just that Snyder has nothing to do with his verse anymore?
Yeah.
Again, very confusing.
Okay. Here is what is utterly perplexing to me about Batgirl. By the way, I barely knew that Batgirl was being made. You know, I'll just say that right off the bat. I didn't know. I wasn't really fully following it. But if somebody had told me, hey, HBO Max was going to release Batgirl onto streaming, but right now we're going to take some time. We're going to retool the movie. We want to release it for theaters. I've been like, oh, okay, that sounds good. Let's do that. That sounds great. Guess what? I didn't even really know there was going to be a Batgirl. Oh, and you're telling me Michael Keaton was going to be in it? Oh, man, this sounds great. I'm on board for this. I might actually go see that. I might actually shell out some money to go see Batgirl in the theaters. Instead, they're like, oh, yeah, it's unsalvageable. Whatever the new studio head's name is, which I should be more up on. It's Zaslav.
David Zaslav.
By the way, I have a great quote from him, David Zaslav, in one of the articles that you sent me. Here's a quote. He's responding to an anonymous actor offering a lot of mega critique. I think we're going to call this actor. It's an anonymous actor brought forth all this critique. I think the actor's name, we're just going to say it just for the sake of it, is Michaela Keatona or something like that. Michaela Keatona. Just for fun, we want to assume it's somebody. But you know what? Zaslav has a quote that I actually agree with. I actually agree with the quote. He says this: "We're not going to release any film before it's ready. We're not going to release a film to make a quarter. We're not going to release a film. The focus is going to be, how do we make each of these films in general as good as possible? But DC is something that we think we could make better, and we're focused on it now." That sounds like a great quote. I just feel like they've created this incredibly insane situation that we're, as fans, we're all throwing our hands up in the air, and they've scrapped a movie that so many people have worked on.
And that's the thing. What he said is great. Well, we're not going to release a movie till it's ready.
Sounds great.
Then make it ready.
Then make it ready, yeah.
Because they've already put like $100 million into this movie that's been filmed. It's in the can. Like, now, I know that they weren't, finished editing and mixing and everything, but the movie is, for all intents and purposes, just about done. So I don't know, it's head scratching. It's a little frustrating. I get what he's saying, but do you scrap an entire, $100 million film? And it wasn't the only film scrapped. It was the Scooby-Doo movie was also scrapped, just about completely finished as well. Both of these movies, did you see the article I sent you about the score for the Batman?
The score is recorded, or at least
for Batgirl, the score was written. There's 90 minutes of music that Natalie Holt has been writing for the past year. She scored the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. She did Loki. She's been working for a year on the Batgirl score. There's 90 minutes of music that she's done for nothing. And that's kind of heartbreaking. And, how do you feel about that as an artist?
Okay, so I'll answer it this way. I was listening to one of my favorite podcasts, WTF podcast, with Mark Maron, and he was interviewing Patton Oswalt, comedian Patton Oswalt. And Patton Oswalt was talking about how there have been times, many times over his career, where he's been brought in to be a script doctor. So you get a script that has some problems in it, and you bring in a comedian or a playwright or a screenplay writer, to help with a script. A script has problems. This is not a rare thing in Hollywood, right? Somebody has an idea for a movie, but the script just kind of isn't working. I mean, a great example is like Indiana Jones, like Indiana Jones 4, Indiana Jones 5. They've been rewritten multiple times before they finally decided, yeah, I think we've got something here that's going to be a great movie. Patton Oswalt, he had some critiques. He's like, you know what? Some of the movies I've worked on have been kind of awful. And I was even okay as the script doctor. I actually didn't want to put my name on it because the movie didn't turn out so well. And then Mark Maron was like, oh yeah, what were those movies? Patton Oswalt didn't want to name the movies. And here's why. He said, listen, we all wanted the movie to succeed. We all wanted it to be awesome. We put our hearts into it. We spent years of our lives. I only spent a month or two, rewriting the script. But some of these people had spent years working on these films. So I don't want to dog these films. It came out fine. I didn't want my name on it. So in terms of thinking about somebody putting together a score, a screenplay, they've worked on the CGI animation, whatever it happens to be. I have seen reports just how heartbreaking all of this is for a lot of the artists and working on it. I guess they're going to get paid or something like that. So I guess that's okay. But I don't know what to make of it between the gatekeepers, the execs that make these decisions versus the artists who devote their lives to it. What Patton Oswalt says is it's a miracle anytime a film actually gets made. So we're just thankful. At the same time, this whole thing is just a sad mess.
Well, like with Natalie Holt with her score, one of the questions that I've had, and I don't know the answer to this, is who owns that music at this point? Does she own that music, or does Warner Brothers own it and it will just never be heard in any form?
Like with anything, hey, by the way, I'll throw this in there. Yesterday, I signed up to be a guest on Conan O'Brien's podcast. Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend. Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend is when he interviews famous people. But then he says Conan O'Brien needs a fan. is when he interviews regular people like me. Well, in my contract, I had to sign off on it saying, hey, do you understand that any likeness, any recording that we do as part of this podcast, you don't own that. So, I mean, this is Conan O'Brien's podcast. That's not a big mega thing. If we're talking DC, Batgirl universe, that score is just going to sit on some hard drive, I guess, until somebody erases it. I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe they could retool it. Maybe they could repurpose it in some ways. Maybe she could reuse it for another film, if that's even possible. Like, but no, she doesn't own it as far as I would know.
The score for the canceled Scooby-Doo movie is even crazier. They had already booked the studio time and the musicians. So after the movie was canceled, they still went ahead and recorded the score.
Are you saying that the Scooby-Doo 2 score is kind of like the Smile, the Beach Boys' Smile of film scores? It's gonna live on infamously as this infamous film score. It's going to develop a cult following. People are going to try to bootleg it so we can know the beauty of the Scooby-Doo 2.
The one that comes to mind is, you heard about the unused score of 2001: A Space Odyssey?
Now that I have heard about. That's funny. Was that you that was telling me about that, or was that somebody else?
No, it wasn't me. I never knew about it. And back when I worked in radio, we had a guy who would come in and he would play really just different stuff, just kind of stuff that was really like kind of off the beaten path.
Eclectic.
Yeah, he played. Yeah, but he played folk music and jazz and a little bit of everything. And he had played a track from the 2001: Space Odyssey, the unreleased score, which eventually was released in some form. And he was telling me all about it one night. It was really fascinating that they had written this entire, and produced this entire score for the film, and then Kubrick decided he just wanted to use classical music instead, and it worked better.
Well, the funniest joke of all, most twisted. Do you know the most twisted part of it?
Refresh my memory. It's been years since I heard this story.
The composer goes to the premiere and sits down to watch the film. And
no.
Kubrick never told him. And so he sits...
That's horrible.
And so the infamous, now iconic, thus spake Zarathustra, like the rising chords of kind of like the theme music for 2001 starts the film. And could you imagine being the composer sitting there? And then you're like, what is this? Like, what is happening?
What a dick move. Oh,
Kubrick was an interesting fellow on multiple levels. Reclusive. Stephen King hated The Shining, because of how he messed with his book. What are you gonna do? That's interesting. What I didn't know is that the actual film score, the recording came out. I'll have to go look for that somewhere.
Yeah, it's out there, but I don't own it, but I've heard a little bit of it.
Yeah. So in terms of narrative, in terms of how they move forward, I guess we'll just have to wait and see. There are things moving forward. I mean, one of the articles you sent said the Batman 2 is going to be delayed a little bit, which kind of stinks. I don't know. Whereas the Joker, it's like, what is it? Folie du. It's some French thing.
Yeah, folie à deux.
Folie à deux. It's coming out sooner, and I do look forward to that. Did you see the Joker? Did you see Joaquin Phoenix's Joker?
I did. I have mixed feelings on the Joker sequel. I love the first film.
Okay.
I have mixed feelings because I thought the first was such a great film.
Standalone.
It stands alone. It almost as a work of art, in a way comic book films rarely do. Almost like, I don't know, like a V for Vendetta. Didn't really necessarily need a sequel, and I felt like it accomplished everything that they were doing in a beautiful way. in a way that you don't really see anymore, because everything just builds on everything. And then we've talked about this a lot, how everything becomes these, expanded or, universes. With Joker, I really liked that, we got an introduction to this guy. We saw this descent into madness. We saw the birth of this character. So I'm kind of worried they're just going to screw it up by giving us more.
Yeah.
At the same time, my understanding is Folie à Deux is a musical.
Oh, well, that makes sense.
And so that's, a really bizarre creative move. But in a way, I'm kind of glad that they are thinking outside of the box, that they're just doing something a little offbeat with it instead of just making a straight up sequel. Lady Gaga's been cast.
Where are you on the Lady Gaga train in terms of her acting or anything like that? Did you see A Star is Born?
I've never seen anything she's acted in. I haven't.
Okay, so for myself, where I'm at, I still need to see, what is it called? House of Gucci.
Yeah, I want to see that one.
Yeah, it's only a matter of like Better Call Saul getting in the way of everything that I just don't watch very much else these days. But I would watch House of Gucci.
Better Call Saul, as it's been winding down, and now it's done as we're taping this. It ended on Monday. I've seen in the last week, I've seen like 5 movies that I've never seen.
Oh, there you go.
Because I'm now opening myself up to other things.
You're seeing other people now. Okay. All of which is to say, I am fully on the Lady Gaga acting train. Like I think she is a megastar. Like so I believe in her for this role, and I'm curious to see what they come up with for it. So I'm fine with it. I guess maybe why didn't they link in the Joker with Robert Pattinson's The Batman? Like, why is it a separate universe again? And then maybe that's why it's a good argument for the Joker being a standalone. It was just its own thing, but we'll see what they come up with. I believe they can do some great work.
Joker has to be its own universe just because they set it in the early 80s.
Yeah, that's a good point. I forgot about that. I forgot about the time setting.
And the nerd in me, that's my biggest problem with the Lady Gaga thing, and it has nothing to do with her as an actress. I'm fine with them casting her. That's great. Is that apparently she's playing Harley Quinn.
Mm-hmm.
And Harley Quinn didn't exist in the 80s.
Oh, how about that?
Harley Quinn was created for Batman the Animated Series. And so to take a 90s character and shove it into an 80s movie kind of bothers me. And I know that is probably my OCD talking.
Joe, yeah.
It's obviously, I get it. She's not real.
You're going to good levels here. Guess what, Joe? As a kid, when Harley Quinn showed up on Batman the Animated Series, I just assumed she was a classic character. I had no idea. So she existed on the TV show before the comics?
Absolutely, yeah.
Wow, I had no idea.
The creation of that character is often looked at as probably the biggest legacy or effect that animated series had, as it introduced that character.
What a brilliant character. I mean, honestly, like very iconic. And
yeah.
To think that she showed up, maybe it's similar to the original Adam West show, where they're just introducing villain after villain after villain. And then all of a sudden, a villain kind of clicks and it becomes a classic character.
And my understanding, and I could be wrong on this, and somebody listening could perhaps correct me, but I believe it was originally intended to be a one-off character, like just any other henchman, character for the Joker. But the voice actress just absolutely went in and killed it.
I ask you, Harley, who's given more hours of amusement to the Gotham police force than me?
No one, Mr. J.
I deserve, nay, demand the right to honor our dear commissioner as well.
Hear, hear!
And so they made it a recurring character.
And I think what makes Harley Quinn so interesting is this toxic sexual tension that she has with Joker. That makes it like infinitely more interesting. Like, sure, she could be a standalone character, but the fact that they kind of love and hate each other, they're always on the verge of killing each other, but they can't get away from each other. I think that's a pretty interesting aspect of it, a part of the development of that character. I think that's why we keep watching.
And I can see that, with Joker, Joker leaned heavily into mental illness. And I imagine I can only guess that the sequel is going to lean heavily into codependency, because that is like the most toxic codependent relationship in all of comic book history.
And the Joaquin Phoenix Joker is as messed up as any character I've ever seen in a villain. Really, I mean,
one of the things I love so much about that movie is I feel like I'm watching a movie from 1982 or whenever. It has a 70s aesthetic to it still.
Have you seen Scorsese's Taxi Driver?
I haven't, but I have seen King of Comedy, which was heavily inspired Joker.
His name is Rupert Pupkin. He lives in a world of make-believe.
Oh, Jerry, I love this guy. Always coming up with these great lines. I love him.
Nobody can remember his name.
Mr. Pipkin. Mr. Pupnik.
Mr. Puffer.
Rupert.
Pupkin, Pupkin.
But by 11:30 tonight, the whole world will know that Rupert Pupkin is the new King of Comedy. Robert De Niro, Jerry Lewis, in a Martin Scorsese picture, the King of Comedy.
Yeah, so Taxi Driver and King of Comedy, it's like those two films. It's like the Joker is the bizarro version of those two films. It's really strange and really well done.
It is. And everything right down to the fonts, to just the end credits, it all looks like it's just straight. If you didn't tell me this was a new movie and I knew nothing about it, I could almost believe that it was an old film.
Yeah. Okay, so here's where I want to take it from here, which it's funny that you mentioned the Harley Quinn aspect, and like it's kind of silly. It's kind of like a nerdy quibble. So here's the thing, Joe. We are quibbling about how DC and WB are handling a bunch of superheroes. I mean, is this really worth it? I mean, at the end of the day, I'm fine if the whole thing implodes on itself and it just becomes a bunch of hackneyed films that no one watches, and eventually, guess what, no one even makes a new Batman film because no one cares anymore. You know what, if that's the reality we live into in the next couple of decades, I am okay with it. Maybe some super fans would not be okay with it. This isn't that big of a deal. I think this is worth noting because it's really kind of tragically hilarious, and Warner Brothers has been in trouble with their DC properties for a decent amount of time now. I mean, I would say as a fan, there's a reason I don't really care to watch the Zack Snyder versions of the films. Like, I'm not that interested in it. I like Henry Cavill as an actor. I like Jason Momoa as an actor. There's the other guy. I like Wonder Woman. What's her name? She's wonderful.
Gal Gadot.
Yeah, Gal Gadot. Maybe I just don't like Zack Snyder and Ben Affleck that much. Maybe that's my only problem here. Maybe I'm just being petty. The funny thing about all this is this really isn't that big of a deal. What do you think about that? Am I being too...
No, they're messing with Michael Keaton.
That's the problem.
Hashtag justice for Keaton.
Okay, I'm on board with that. I can be. The thing is Michael Keaton's going to be fine. I mean, have you seen the film Spotlight, where he's a journalist?
If it takes a village to raise a child, it takes a village to abuse one.
The church knew, and they let it happen.
Shouldn't talk about this.
I think you should, actually. People need to know.
Do you think your paper has the resources to take on the church?
We're going to tell this story right.
That's the only thing that will put an end to this.
This kind of story is why we do this.
Spotlight, rated R, now playing.
And, it's based off of real life stuff. And
I know this movie, yeah.
I mean, Michael Keaton, his career, he's good. He's good to go, He's had Birdman. He'll be fine the rest of his days. But it's just a bummer, isn't it? It's just a bummer.
It's a bummer for every kid who went to see Batman in 1989, and it was the biggest deal in the world for them and changed their lives. Now, at the same time, this fellow we're talking about here, this character, David Zaslav, maybe he's doing us the biggest favor in the world. Maybe, the idea of seeing Michael Keaton as Batman again, maybe it's more romantic to us than it is actually the idea than the actual execution. Maybe they are going to destroy our childhoods, and maybe they're doing us a favor by shelving all this stuff. But I guess The Flash is still coming out. Let's talk about that, because this Ezra Miller stuff is.
So what's funny about the Ezra Miller stuff, and I've seen a few comments on that, they just released a statement, and when I say they, like, there's actually some confusion about it. Like, is this Warner Brothers like some kind of PR lawyer thing? Did Ezra Miller actually release their own statement, or was it written for them? I don't know. Who knows these days? The funny thing is, or like the truly conflicting thing is, like, there are some accounts of Miller breaking into someone's house and stealing alcohol, but there's other stuff like choking a woman and something to do with having underage people living in their house and keeping them under like their care. Like, I don't get it all. What I mean to say is if you are engaging in some kind of sexual exploitation, that goes beyond, hey, I'm really sorry for what I've done. Can we all just move on and release The Flash in 2023? This is going deeper than just like, hey, our star has some issues here. It's like, oh, can we release a film like this?
Did you read the statement?
I did a couple of times. What is it? Give me, but you can review it with me.
It very much is a PR move in my mind.
That's what it seems like.
It seems carefully worded. They make a point of apologizing to everyone that I have alarmed and upset with my past behavior. There's a couple words there that I'd like to just circle in on for a moment. Alarmed and upset doesn't quite say the people I've hurt, and there were people hurt in these situations. And then the other one that strikes me is my past behavior. As we're recording this, they were arrested 10 days ago for the burglary. Are we ready to call that the past yet?
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing too. Like, I'm in the church world, and there's a lot of people that have messed up that are church leaders. And one of the big words that people like really have trouble saying is, I was an abuser. I abused people. And so I don't see that in this statement. Instead of saying the people I've upset, it's more like, no, the people that I've abused. Like, at least go, if that's the case, right? And Ezra Miller would have to answer for themselves to say that. Again, who knows who composed this? You know, having recently gone through a time of intense crisis, as in 10 days ago, right? You know, like whatever it happens to be. But here's the thing. I don't want to belittle Ezra Miller. I take everybody's mental history, mental health history, emotional history, spiritual history very seriously. I really want to apologize if it comes off of me being glib or making fun of Ezra Miller. I just think in terms of like releasing a film, this is a fiasco.
Yeah, and again, I think what we're saying here is the problem with this statement is it sort of reeks of having been written by 10, high-priced Warner Brothers attorneys.
Yes, it does. Yeah, maybe Donald Trump's attorneys wrote it for them.
Maybe.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, what do you do? I feel bad because Ezra Miller seems to be a really talented person, and maybe it was in some ways the right choice. I do know that there was an actor played the Flash on TV more recently as well, and he might be a great candidate too, but you can't reshoot a whole, $100 million film without shooting another $100 million film.
I really feel for everybody that has been involved in making this movie over the past several years. I'll tell you what I equate it to. I always think about everybody else that, wrote or starred in or directed or worked on The Cosby Show. And to have put all of that work and effort into making what was considered one of the great sitcoms of all time, and to have the legacy just completely destroyed by the star. And so when I see what, this sort of implosion of Ezra Miller, I want Ezra Miller to get the help that they need. But I really feel for everybody else that's invested so much work and time into making this movie, to just see sort of it crumbling like this. And no doubt, that's why, you get kind of a PR statement like they did. They're trying to salvage this movie. But then again, you got to look at, everything else that's going on with Warner Brothers Discovery or whatever it is called right now, and you go, well, there was no baggage with the Batgirl movie, and they just scrapped it. But this movie, they're still trying to salvage it. I think you said they used the word unsalvageable for Batgirl, and one of the things I read was that basically it's just the sets and everything. They're not cinema level. This is not a movie theater level production. It was made for streaming, and it looks like it was made for streaming, and they don't want to make movies like this for streaming anymore when it comes to DC characters. And so in a way, if that's the case, and there's really nothing wrong with this movie other than it just doesn't look big enough, how very sad, but I mean, the Flash, for whatever reason, I guess they're still trying to salvage that one, but has irreparable damage been done to this film?
Yeah. Now, you said something a few minutes ago. You said maybe Zaslav is going to be right. Maybe they will retool, reformulate, and it's going to be great. Maybe he is doing us a big favor. I am always willing to give people the benefit of the doubt, but here would be my main point. If DC does salvage itself, it's going to be down to the artists. It's going to be down to the people, the crafts people making these things, the artisans, the crafters of the word, of the image, the directors, the true producers of the film. And so Zaslav, buddy, you're going to have to rely on the people, the creatives, the creative people to save you in this sense. And I guess I just want to put the focus back on creative people who are doing the day in, day out work. I go back and forth about artists, like every year during the Oscars, there's always kind of a bit of a backlash about actors being smug, actors being these progressives that are always trying to push their political agendas and all of that, and how they should just stay in their lane. They're not politicians, they're not activists, they're just dumb, shallow actors. And I think there's some good, decent critique about that. I guess what I would want to say, though, is as a culture, we're always telling our stories. We're always going on and on and on about the important stories. And our stories tell us things about ourselves. So it's not as simple as saying, oh, yeah, actors aren't important, they're just shallow. Well, there's a lot of shallow people out there, so I get it. But the stories we tell, the artworks we put out there are incredibly important.
While I have real concerns and genuine issues with how Warner Brothers is handling this situation, I do not think that they should have scrapped those two movies. The one thing with DC that you can't really argue if you've been paying attention at all over the last decade is that they set out to do what Marvel did with the MCU, and DC, Warner Brothers, they did it very poorly. And so if this is if this is part of their plan to regroup and retool, and as you said, maybe it will be better as a result of this. I mean, clearly something needs to be done to get on the right path. And the Batman was a really good step, I think. Joker was a great step. I mean, what a two really terrific films. And then there have been little bright spots in this whole Snyderverse or whatever you want to call it. And people who have paid attention to it better than I have maybe have a better grip on this whole Snyderverse thing, because it really genuinely does confuse me. How these films are, some of them are part of it and some are not, even though they all have the same actors. I don't know.
Well, and we haven't even mentioned, Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn and the Suicide Squad, and
there's two of those movies.
Yeah, that's confusing too. Now there's mixed views. Like some people really like those films, and so I've not actually really seen them. I started to watch Harley Quinn, and I don't know, it didn't quite grasp me. But I really like Margot Robbie actually as an actress. But there you go. Yeah, a retooling. I don't know. I almost feel like maybe it's similar to Star Wars in that they okayed some things. And then they're like, well, hey, has anybody thought about how all these plots go together? What? Why would we do such a thing?
Warner Brothers, this is like the anti-Disney move. I mean, Disney is leaning all in to streaming.
Yeah, for sure.
And Star Wars, right now, almost exclusively exists, in streaming. And it's, an onslaught of new content. Whereas Warner Brothers seems to be wanting to pull these characters away from streaming. I don't know. Do you think that's the right move in 2022?
I am pro going to movie theaters. Just in the same way that I'm pro going to concerts if we can. Every time we do it, we support artists. And it's not that streaming is bad. I have seen, like with Star Wars, I would have some complaints. I feel like the quality of some of the TV shows is not quite there, and that kind of bums me out a little bit.
But you could make that argument about some of the movies too.
Yeah, basically.
Maybe not with the production level, but quality overall.
Yeah, well, as far as quality, I my biggest complaint about Star Wars is Episode 9.
It's really my only complaint. It still stings, though.
Yeah, there's no takesy backsies on Episode 9. It's canon, whatever that means. Maybe we can just ignore it. But all of which is to say, I agree. I like the idea of making films for theaters. I think it can be both, actually. Like, I think you can have a 2-month theater run. 2 months isn't very long. Like 2 months goes by really quickly, and then all of a sudden it's on streaming. Hey, that's great. I'm all for that type of thing. And again, not everything has to be made for the theaters as well, but I guess they'll figure it out, and we'll figure out if we want to watch it all.
Yeah, but it's not just, I don't think it's just with films. Maybe I'm wrong, but my understanding was that they're moving away from like scripted television and going, in a different direction with this, which HBO Max has a lot of scripted content that was original to it, not just movies, but shows. And so I do appreciate much of what Disney is doing with their shows. I think that maybe there's a little more than I can keep up with between Star Wars and Marvel. Yes, there are moments in Obi-Wan Kenobi that just don't look as good as a Star Wars movie. My biggest complaint there is I just think I would have rather have seen that released as a film, a 2.5 hour movie instead of a series with a bit of a bigger budget. But the new show, the one coming out, the Rogue One prequel, Andor, looks phenomenal to me. I can't wait for it.
Looks really good. But by the trailer, it looks as high quality as it possibly could. Like,
spies, saboteurs, assassins. We've all done terrible things on behalf of the rebellion.
Cassian Andor. Don't matter what you tell me or tell yourself. You'll ultimately die fighting these bastards. Wouldn't you rather give it all at once to something real?
Looks better than Obi-Wan Kenobi to me, but I don't know.
Yeah, well, Book of Boba Fett looked better than Obi-Wan to me.
Yeah. So anyway, I think part of it's kind of funny as you and I are getting older, we're contemplating how much we can even take anymore. And so it's like, what's it to me if HBO Max doesn't do any more scripted shows? What's it to me? I've got my Tolkien books, Joe. I'm going to be okay. Like, I'm gonna make it through this life. But it is interesting to ponder where it's all going. Another thing to ponder is, have you heard about Disney Plus? It's going to start next year. There's going to be an ad tier where they play ads, and then if you want to pay $3 more or whatever, then you won't get ads.
Getting some news on Disney, which was first reported by The Information, but they are confirming that in a first for them, they will expand Disney Plus offerings to consumers by introducing an ad-supported tier beginning in the U.S. David, late 22. Plans to go international next year. Something some of the street has called for Netflix to do. But we'll see what it means for Disney.
Yeah, well, I think the end of the release is perhaps the most interesting line. The ad-supported offering is viewed, this is their opinion, as a building block in the company's path to achieving its long-term target of 230 to 260 million Disney Plus subscribers by fiscal year 24. That is a lot of what Disney will continue.
So it's so funny. Netflix set this standard of, there's no ads. I believe Netflix is even pondering doing an ad tier as well. Disney Plus. Oh, we can just watch Disney Plus. We are right back where we started. Our corporate overlords, they've given us a reprieve for just a few years on the commercialization, but now we're right back to where we started.
I have the the lower tier version of Hulu.
Me too.
Do you have issues with the commercials being extremely loud or playing at the wrong time or episodes stopping too soon and going to the next episode? I really feel like they make it intentionally crappy to force you to break down and pay for the ad-free version, and that's what I'm worried about. I'm probably just gonna, with Disney Plus, I'm probably just gonna spring for the ad-free.
just for our own sanity. I've been watching Only Murders in the Building with Steve Martin and Martin Short, Selena Gomez, and I feel like there are so many commercials in their half-an-hour episodes. It just takes forever to get through an episode. It's a bit overkill, and yes, on the loudness. I mean, what are we going to do? I grew up with it, right? So I'm used to it. So I can kind of endure it. I grew up taping Star Wars off of Fox, and then pausing it right at the commercial so I could try to get an actual version of Return of the Jedi if I could. I'm used to this kind of stuff, but man, I'm a bit bummed out by it. It's just a nuisance, but we'll see what happens.
For Disney Plus, it's disappointing to me.
Yeah.
If it had launched that way, I probably wouldn't think anything of it. So to give me something great and make it crappier kind of sucks. But
yep.
What you gonna do?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, what are they gonna do? Am I gonna sit here watching Star Wars and there's gonna be an interruption every 10 minutes? I mean, watching the films, is that what they're gonna do? I mean, goodness gracious me. We'll see what happens.
I believe that's what HBO. I have the ad-free HBO Max, but I believe, because I looked it up before I got HBO Max just to see how they did it. And my biggest concern was interrupting movies. And it's, from the reviews I read, sounded like they do interrupt the movies.
I must have the ad-free version because I don't. Yeah, so that's funny. I don't get ads for HBO Max.
Yeah, I mean, you want to sit there and watch Citizen Kane, and here's Flo from Progressive.
Yeah,
it just takes you out. It takes you out.
Liberty Mutual. Yeah. Oh, well, let's wrap up this section. We have one more news item. Anything else anything you want to say to wrap up?
No, I don't think so. I think we can move on to this is kind of relates to our past Beatles episodes.
Yeah,
now we're going to get into, right? Sort of loosely connected.
A few things happened that really made me think in the same realm of thinking about A Hard Day's Night and Beatlemania and how that just hit and how it changed culture. So there's a couple of things, kind of like bookends of culture here. One is Elvis. How can you talk about the Beatles without bringing up Elvis, really, if you think about it? And all I really mean to say is Elvis as a cultural phenomenon and pondering the effect that he had on culture. And now, is he forgotten? Is kind of the question. And so I read an article from the Washington Post, which is a really good article. Elvis, kind of like looking at his legacy and will he be remembered on into the future? In this article, and we can maybe post it somewhere, it mentions how there was this get together. Lisa Marie Presley was there. They have these anniversary events at Graceland every year, kind of commemorating his life. And I think it's on his birthday, in fact, not on his death day. And what this article laments is, the people that are there are increasingly older and older and older. And so, eventually there's not going to be a whole lot of people that cares to have an Elvis commemoration event. And yeah, the Baz Luhrmann's Elvis film with Tom Hanks was a hit. It was a decently modest hit this summer.
You don't so much as wiggle a finger.
I'm playing the music that I want. Music that I love. People wanted to put me in jail because of the way I was moving. I would do anything to make sure my mama and daddy never had to live in no poverty ever again.
I think if you dream it, you'll do it.
You know?
Yeah.
In the end, you gotta listen to yourself.
Elvis, rated PG-13, June 24th.
Did you see it?
No, I didn't see it. No.
I didn't either.
For me, I would go to the movie theaters as much as I possibly could, but I have 4 kids and I'm just living at home and I don't make it out. So instead, if I'm going to the theaters, it's usually for something the kids and I can see together. I don't go for my deep adult films. I don't get out very much as I would like to, but I would go see Elvis. Absolutely. I would definitely see it. What's interesting about this is to think about Elvis being forgotten. And then we were asking the question, will the Beatles be forgotten? And can something as iconic as A Hard Day's Night stay in the public consciousness? And then something happened this week that just made this connection for me. And it's funny, I had just gotten done watching the finale of Better Call Saul, and up pops this thing. It's called Runaway. It's just premiering, I believe, or recently premiered. It's a concert film documentary about the artist Post Malone.
My name is Austin Richard Post. Music's what I love to do.
There's often a moment that defines an artist. On this Runaway tour, Post is having that moment.
You go on the road for months, you gotta get pumped up.
He has an eclectic love of music.
Greatness is greatness. I'm gonna be myself, and if you don't like it, I don't give it.
On stage, there's no band. It's just him.
And it follows him around on his, I think it's called the Runaway Tour from 2019. And so he did this big, massive stadium tour across America right before the pandemic hit. And I just clicked on it out of curiosity because I feel like I don't understand Post Malone as an artist, and I've never really taken time to really listen to his music. So I'm just working out of ignorance. But I thought, yeah, you know what? I want to see what this kind of this weird artist in the sense, and he's weird because he has all these face tattoos, and he's kind of hard to pin down. And anyway, I'm watching this film, and the thing that strikes me is I don't know what's going on. I don't know why people think this guy is so great. And it's just really funny because to me, it was kind of like a Hard Day's Night Beatles moment. If I had been a middle-aged parent in 1964, would I have gone and thought, this is brilliant? This is like, these guys are going to change music forever. Because I am the old curmudgeon watching Post Malone. And here's what's really funny about this documentary is it describes him as a musical genius. And this guy is revolutionary.
Question for you, though. Is this a documentary that he had made?
So do you know what the whole film, his film comes across as a propaganda piece put together by his team. It really does. It's like, I wouldn't necessarily call it just a promo for him, but it's all tailor-made to put him in the best light possible. Even though in this film, like he is no Lennon, McCartney, Harrison, and Ringo Starr. He comes across as a troubled man. He comes across as a prick, to be honest with you. I mean, there are numerous times in the film where he tells people just to F off. You know, if you don't like me, just F off. If you don't get what I'm doing, I don't need you. And also, I'm going to consume lots of alcohol. And like, I read this review, and it's like, well, the film features an awful amount of beer pong.
Post does a show, singing in front of 22,000 people, kills it, walks off stage, and then go right back to playing beer pong without skipping a beat.
Everybody relaxes differently, but I go and play beer pong with the boys and just shoot the shit, listen to music.
You're gonna be an explosive player. Like, I like to have a nice balance of, I don't want to be miserable all the time. So sometimes I like to, just go buck wild with the boys.
Ooh. I actually lost 50 grand to him in a beer pong tournament. Get the f out of my face.
It's like, okay, well, and I am here to testify. Yes, it does. It does. And he gets all grumpy. Like when people don't abide by the rules of beer pong, like he castigates them. He calls them out. And it's just like you're sitting there watching this like, man, this guy takes his beer pong seriously. As he's half drunk, stumbling around, yelling at people. Yeah, reaction. You had a reaction a minute ago. And I couldn't stop talking about beer pong.
Well, the whole F off thing.
Yeah.
I mean, in fairness, John Lennon sort of had that sort of a vibe to him, that sort of personality. Maybe he was a little more articulate in how he went about telling people to F off, but I have to tell you, I just barely know who Post Malone is.
Me too.
I'm familiar with Post Malone. I would have never, I give you a lot of credit for, I would have never just hit play because I'm so old and I'm stuck in my ways and I want to hear my Beatles records and my Billy Joel records again. And this whole thing with Post Malone, you blew my mind. I had no idea, and this is how out of the loop I am. I had no idea that Post Malone was big enough to play stadiums. That just floors me.
Yeah. So maybe that's part of the thing for me is I saw the same looks on young women's faces that I saw with A Hard Day's Night in the Beatles, and that I've seen in numerous Elvis clips, right, over the years. Like, I'm less immersed in Elvis, but I've seen the images, right? The same swooning, these women that look like they would just give themselves over to him if only he would ask. And they're just so enamored by him. And by the way, I have no real problem with Post Malone's music. It did not reach out to me. It did not draw me in. It doesn't seem that original, or it doesn't seem like a work of genius. It's fine. I have no real complaints about it. What they were saying about him being a musical genius is he's kind of inaugurating genre-less music. And what that means is it rock? Is it hip hop? Is it folk? Is it electronic music? And the answer is like, yeah, it is kind of this convergence of all those things at once. I don't have a problem with that. It's not particularly compelling to me, but
I think he draws from a lot of different influences. The little I do know about him, I think the first real, I guess, that he came into my consciousness was during the pandemic. I think he was doing like live streams of like just like covers of like so I think he did like one night that was all Nirvana music, and it was just kind of things like that. Just kind of draws from a lot of different influences that that go into his music. But I couldn't tell you. I couldn't name a Post Malone song.
Yeah, one is called Rockstar, by the way.
I've been popping, man. I feel just like a rock star. All my brothers got that gas and they always be smoking like a rock star.
There's this moment in the film where like one of his producers is like going on and on about how much of a genius he is. And Post Malone is sitting there jamming with a drummer in like kind of like a studio setting. It might be, I don't know if it's like some house or if it's on the bus or something like that. And what's funny about the moment is he's fine. Like, he's a great guitarist, but he comes across to me as any old dude sitting in a Guitar Center riffing away, like picking up the electric guitars, blasting out some Zeppelin or something like that. Like, it's fine. Like, he's a great musician. Here's where I feel weird saying it. It's like, maybe I'm missing something. Maybe this is just my old man moment. I've crossed into the next level of my life where, I'm asking, these guys to get off my lawn, my musical lawn, because, the music these kids make. I think I happen to have here's one thing I said to you when we were conversing about this earlier. I like Billie Eilish. I like Harry Styles. I think they're brilliant. Post Malone? So maybe I'm trying to figure out, am I complaining with the self-proclaimed genius, the self-proclaimed music revolutionary, or am I truly missing something with today's music? I don't know.
Do you ever listen to Billie Eilish or Harry Styles? Like, will you be in the car and put that on?
It's funny that you ask. My family just went on a vacation, and we signed up. We actually found out we had a 3-month free Sirius satellite radio, a free 3-month subscription. So we signed up for our vacation, and we had it on all during vacation. I have to say, the majority of what I listened to was the 80s station, the 90s station, the yacht rock station, which is all easygoing 70s music. It's like, Hall and Oates and stuff like that. I listened to the Beatles station and the U2 station. Those are my 5.
So no.
There was one time a Harry Styles song was on and I stopped and I was like, oh, there it is, Harry Styles. I like that guy. And actually, I would listen to them more. If my kids were like, hey, let's listen to this, I would put it on. If my younger generation would put me into that place, I would do it. If they said, let's listen to some Post Malone, I'd be like, are you serious? I'd be so put out. I'd be like, oh my goodness. I would even do the same with Taylor Swift. I would be like, yeah, let's listen to some Taylor Swift. If they said even Beyonce, I'd be like, yeah, let's listen to some Beyonce. I think all of that stuff is better than when I was listening with the so-called musical genius Post Malone.
I think 1989 was the last new album that I thought was great, and then I just decided to dig in and just only listen to my old man stuff from that point forward.
It is funny. I do feel like I am still listening to a decent amount of new music, but most of that new music is for me is discovering older music that I just didn't like get when I was younger, like Stevie Wonder, Marvin Gaye, Queen, bands like this.
I do that kind of, I do that kind of thing on, through like Pandora, whatever streaming. I will listen to, like the other day, I put on this is really, you talk about going deep. I put on an Ames Brothers album. Do you know who the Ames Brothers are? We're talking like the, 1940s, 1950s. I put on a Platters record. I'll do things like that. I will put on, the Four Aces. I bet you've never heard of the Four Aces, but if you watch Back to the Future, the scene when Marty's he arrives in 1955 and he's walking through the town square and they're playing Mr. Sandman.
Mr. Sandman, bring me a dream. Make her complexion like peaches and cream. Give her two lips like roses and clover. Then tell me that my lonesome nights are over. Sandman.
That's the Four Aces.
Yeah, then that's why I knew about him. Yeah.
And the lead singer was a guy named Al Alvarez. He was a local celebrity in Philadelphia when I grew up.
I was a big listener as a kid to the Back to the Future soundtrack. So like that song is pretty like I listened to the Back to the Future soundtrack like over and over again. So yeah, I guess I knew more about them than I realized.
But I put on one of their albums the other day just to, just for, but it's probably more for atmosphere. I like the mood. I like the vibe of it. I do that kind of thing a lot where I guess that's how I will listen to new old music in a sense. My wife will listen to new music. We put it on in the car and it's fine, but I just can't really get into it. I don't know. Maybe it's just the place I'm at in my life. It's just like, everything in me not to tune on over to, to my 80s rock station.
I listen to the new music of the artists that I already enjoy. So for instance, this summer, I've listened to probably more than anything, the new Arcade Fire record. So I like the band Arcade Fire. And then the lead singer of Radiohead, he's in another band with a guitarist from Radiohead, and they put out a new album from their band is called The Smile. And so I've listened to that. So I do tend to listen to new music, but it's with the artists that I've already kind of come to love,
Okay, so I'm in a similar place with you. We're at that place in life now where the artists that we love no longer make hits.
Yeah.
But they're still making art, and I love that, and I appreciate that. I loved Springsteen's last album.
Yeah, you gave that to me. That was a good album.
I did, didn't I? Yeah, it's a great record. So
despite the fact that he's dead to us because of ticket prices, he's dead to us. But that's a great album.
I'm just saying. He's Springsteen is now the man. He was he was for the working man, but now he's the man.
Yeah.
He's part of the system. He's part of the problem. He's there oppressing the working man. But it's still a great album.
It's just the industry standard. If a couple wants to shell out $2,000 to go see him, that's on them. That's on them to get in credit card debt that they can't pay off for a year just to see him sing Born in the USA.
He doesn't even play Born in the USA. He almost never plays that song. My understanding is he doesn't like to play Born in the USA because it was kind of co-opted by the political right in the 80s.
Right.
And it's a protest song that was taken to be like, almost like a patriotic song. It was not what it was. So he actually will play it more overseas than he will in America.
Okay. There you go.
Occasionally he will play a slow acoustic version in America that's really depressing and sounds more like a protest song that isn't nearly as good.
Born down in a dead man's town, the first kick I took was when I hit the ground. You end up like a dog that's been beat too much, till you spend half your life just a covering up. I was born in the USA. Born in the USA.
Does he play Philadelphia in concert? I love that song.
Almost never, but I saw him do it once.
Yeah, that's like one of my favorites.
Yeah, I saw him do that at Lincoln Financial Field in Philadelphia. But very rarely. I mean, probably only played it a dozen. You know, I think he's done it. I think he did it on one tour in the mid '90s, and then it's like a dozen times since.
Well, here we are giving him free promo when he does not even need it.
I'm not good enough to attend his show. I'm not rich enough and worthy enough to be there with the elite fans that he wants to have with him.
Right.
But, you know, still love you, Bruce. Jersey forever.
Okay. Maybe here is my point to wrap this up about Post Malone, and then you can share your blockbuster film that's coming out this year, which is going to blow people away. It's this. I think you and I are contemplating, what does it mean when things are just so quickly forgotten, right? So let me read you this quote at the end of this article about Elvis. The author, at the beginning of the article, gave their own story about how important Elvis was in their home growing up. Elvis was just always on. So this younger person, who I think is maybe like a little bit older than us, to them, Elvis was just a mainstay, like a central part of their family. Here's what this person says to close out their article from the Washington Post. Maybe impermanence doesn't matter. What matters, at least for me, is that in this Nashville moment, sitting with strangers in the dark, I am moved by the all-encompassing sound of a voice. So I listen, really listen, and I think of my mom and the singer who joined us for errands, holidays, and household chores. And when I remember those moments, I'm reminded, listening to Elvis, we were happy. The point is, to me, is, well, you know, all things go away. To quote the book of Ecclesiastes, you know, it's all a chasing after the wind. Life is vain. You know, everything is forgotten. Everything passes away. A season for everything, and for everything a season. You know, turn. To quote another famous rock band, the Byrds. Actually, who wrote that song?
Oh, that was Pete Seeger wrote "Turn." Who lived in my wife's uncle, who passed away a couple years ago, lived in the same town as Pete Seeger, Fishkill, New York. Used to run into him all the time.
That's pretty cool.
Who, by the way, inspired the Bruce Springsteen album, The Seeger Sessions, and it all connects.
It all connects, and it's all going to be forgotten. And I'm going to say two things right now. I'm going to go out on a limb for the sake of posterity. If we fast forward a couple of decades, I almost guarantee you, I'm going to say this like an arrogant old man who thinks he knows something. Post Malone is going to be forgotten. That guy is going to be a flash in the pan.
You're calling it.
I'm calling it. I'm calling it right now. I wish I had Marty McFly's almanac. You know, like I wish I knew, right? You know, he might sell. He might have 10 more, you know, mega hit albums. I could be completely wrong. At the same time, who am I to take other people's joy away from them? If they enjoy Post Malone and he's their thing, he's going to be the artist that people put on for their kids in the year 2050 or 2060 or whatever. You know what? So be it. Let it be. It'll be fine. They'll listen to their station of what was popular in the 2020s, and I'm going to be dead, you know, or whatever. It's fine. It really is fine. And everything's going to be forgotten. So I'm at peace with that. I think I'm coming to terms with being at peace with things being forgotten. Things that, like for me, that were so beloved for me. You know, oh, by the way, I just listened to this there's this woman, I can't remember her name. She's a formerly Christian comedian. That's part of her routine. She's a great comedian.
Taylor Tomlin?
Yeah, she's great. She's hilarious. She just had this little bit that I saw where she was making fun of somebody that loved Christian music.
How long have you been a Christian? A year. Oh, you're like brand new. What? You like the music? Nobody has ever become a Christian because of the music, just so you know. That has never, ever happened. Nobody's ever been like, why did you decide to dedicate your life to Jesus Christ? And they were like, have you heard Stephen Curtis Chapman? Because that guy rocks.
I remember that. I've seen that clip, the Stephen Curtis Chapman shot. Yeah.
It's a funny, clever bit, I have to admit. What made me sad about it is Stephen Curtis Chapman has some great songs. And sure, he has a lot of cheese out there. But so like for me, for my kids, like I love some Petra 80s songs. There's all these bands that actually have made great music. Her bit made me sad because now everyone's going to think Christian music is just all cheese and bad and derivative. And it's just not true. And what can I do? I can't go off and like go, no, you have to listen to 40, 60, 100 hours of this great music that I'm sitting there trying to convince people. Well, guess what? Here's the thing. Elvis is the same thing. How are you going to convince a bunch of 10-year-olds right now? No, kids, please tell me. You have to believe me. Elvis is a brilliant genius. They're not going to care. They've moved on. They're going to go on to their Post Malones or to whatever else is coming along these days. And I'm just learning how to be at peace with that. It's kind of what I'm saying.
Well, you're 40 years old. When's the last time you've put on an Elvis album?
Never.
There you go.
When my granny died, she had an Elvis Christmas CD that I grabbed. And I should put that on. I like Post Malone. There's this funny scene in the Post Malone documentary where this rapper dies, this young rapper, I can't remember his name. And all of his entourage, his people, are sitting there pouring out their beers for this dead rapper. And it's this like bizarre scene to me because from what I can tell, they're pouring it out onto carpet. And like I think they're like in some green room or some stage. They're like in some huge, massive arena, pouring out beer onto the floor of carpet. I'm just like, are you kidding me? Somebody's going to have to clean that up, you bunch of D-bags. Like, what is wrong with you people? I know your friend just died, but no. Yeah. So anyway, watch the film Runaway. It'll change your life. I'm going to have to pour one out for my granny. I'm going to listen to Elvis Christmas. I'm going to pour one out on my carpet. And maybe I'll do that this Christmas. Listen to that for her.
Well, if you were Bruce Springsteen, you could just destroy your carpet, throw it away, and put a new one in every day.
It wouldn't matter. Yeah.
I think the lesson here is that, Get Back, the documentary came out last year and it was 8 hours long. And you and I, we were obsessed with it. Beatles fans were obsessed with it. But I think it was a lot, it was hard to engage with a younger generation, a newer audience. It was pretty much made for us, right? And maybe had there been more beer pong in it, maybe Peter Jackson should have put some special effects in and had the Beatles playing beer pong for a couple hours. Maybe it would have blew up.
They could have dressed Ringo and Paul up into the suits. And even they could have gotten a Yoko there too. Dress them up into the green screen suits, do some beer pong, and then just de-age their faces. They could have de-aged.
They could even brought back John and George like they did with Tarkin in Rogue One. You know what I mean?
Yes, Beatles and beer pong. It could have been a new thing. That would have been memeable for sure.
Beatles and beer pong, but that's the new Peter Jackson movie that's coming out. Beatles and beer pong,
and then Post Malone will do a duet with them. Okay, now. Speaking of relevant concert films imagine all of the 40 to 70-year-old women who are going to be swooning over this concert film that you are going to talk about. What could possibly draw you back to a movie theater, Joe?
Well, it has to be something huge. And for me, Chris, and I'm dead serious. In fact, it's going to be in theater for 2 nights.
Yeah, it's one of those. Yeah, limited runs.
October 5th and October 9th, Billy Joel live at Yankee Stadium is getting a theatrical release, Chris.
Good evening, New York. Welcome to the house that Ruth built, Yankee Stadium. I'm in a New York state of mind.
Yankee Stadium is just a magic name.
What was the year? 1990?
1990. Have you ever seen Billy Joel live at Yankee Stadium?
You mean the film itself? I don't believe I have.
Okay, so this was a concert film that was released, at the time, back in 1990, 91. And he did a couple nights at Yankee Stadium. It was the first rock concerts held at Yankee Stadium. It was a big deal. It was a huge deal when it happened. Of course, this is Billy Joel during the Stormfront tour. So he's, pretty much
top of his game. Yeah.
Top of his game, height of his fame, huge. In fact, when this concert happened, he'd only been playing stadiums for a couple years. So he was really just kind of at the top. Anyway, all that to say, it was released on VHS and Laserdisc. I had the VHS as a kid, Chris, and I would have to say, in my life, Billy Joel Live at Yankee Stadium is the concert film I've watched more than any other concert film, though almost exclusively as a 13, 14-year-old kid. Watched it over and over. Tried to get my friends to watch it. They weren't as interested, but I watched that movie over and over.
What do you think was so compelling to you?
I just loved Billy Joel. It was a great, energetic performance. I had never seen him in concert when I bought that, so I was just blown away by it. At the same time, I'd seen other concert videos of his that didn't pull me in the same way. They were good, don't get me wrong.
Did you see the Russian one?
I did.
Yeah, okay. I've always wanted to see that one as well. So
I had that album, and there was a Live in Leningrad was released on VHS back in the day. There was Live from Long Island was 1982. Leningrad was 87. There was one for the River Dreams tour in 94. There was even one that was on home video from Time Life in 1976 called Billy Joel Tonight. I'd seen them all, but the Billy Joel Yankee Stadium concert, that was my jam, Chris.
Yeah.
If you'd asked me in a million years if that would get a theatrical release, I would honestly, in all seriousness, I'm scratching my head over this. I can't imagine that there is a massive audience. I can't fathom there being enough Billy Joel fans to justify a theatrical release for this concert film that's kind of forgotten. But they've remastered this film. They've re-edited it, which is probably the part of it I'm the most excited about, because to be honest with you, the editing in the original doesn't hold up. The effects that they put on the camera work is very dated and it's choppy, and they were clearly going for something, cool in 1990, but it isn't anymore at all. So I suspect that they have recut this into a more traditional concert film for probably more enjoyable viewing. I think they've added a song that wasn't in the original, and there's like some new interview footage that they've done to talk about this, and it's all going to be in theaters for 2 nights.
Yeah, I think the beautiful absurdity of it is, I think it's just wonderful, right?
It is. It's great.
And Billy Joel is an artist that people go back and forth on. Some people just love him to pieces. You and I are in that camp. You're more of an expert than I am. Other people kind of just see him maybe as not as a significant an artist. Maybe he's more of a fluff artist, A
lot of people back in the day used to complain that he was too derivative, of other artists who influenced him, like the Beatles and Ray Charles. And, I always thought that was kind of a cop-out, because there were no Beatles if there hadn't been Chuck Berry and Elvis and Little Richard and Fats Domino. I mean, like, they were derivative. You know what I mean? I think most musicians are, and that's okay. You can be truly, I guess, original, but I think everybody has influences. And Billy Joel, to me, was a perfect example of somebody who took his influences and he just made great music out of it. The Nylon Curtain, sure, it's a Beatles album, but man, it's a great Beatles album. You know what I mean? New York State in Mind is a great Ray Charles song.
Yeah.
But, if they're great songs, who cares, if you could hear the influences in them?
Yeah. By the way, I heard a decent amount of Billy Joel listening to satellite radio, and kind of like those Innocent Man songs. And it strikes me today as more as a work of brilliance and a work of genius, because now I understand the context of where he came from. And it's kind of amazing how he recreated songs, doo-wop songs from the 50s, 60s, and those kind of influences, and yet transformed it into his own thing. I think that shows how much.
Uptown Girl is brilliant. It's Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons. And he took Ragdoll, a song about a poor girl and a rich guy.
Hand me down. When she was just a kid, her clothes were hand me down. Hand me down. They always laughed at her when she came into town. Called her Ragdoll.
just flipped it on its head and made it about a rich girl and a poor guy. And an absolutely brilliant spin on that song. And it sounds like a Frankie Valli song. I mean, it's just amazing.
Okay, so here's my reflection about Billy Joel. I wanted to go see Billy Joel this summer, just too expensive. Couldn't work it out with the dates when I was visiting my friend in New York.
Not Springsteen expensive, though.
Not Springsteen expensive, yeah. Not that Billy Joel needs my money by any means. But Billy Joel is still selling out stadiums. I mean, his tours are still going. He's like one of the top earners and performers. Here's the thing, basically forgotten, like, and maybe there's hundreds of millions of people that live just here in America. He's infamous all over the world. And yet, will he be remembered? Will Paul Simon's music be remembered? Will Springsteen and Dylan's music be remembered? I don't know. Who cares at this point? And guess what it's about, Joe? It's about going to that theater, having a great night. That's what it's about. Just enjoying the music once again, enjoying the 4K remaster, the extra songs, the re-edits. Man, well, this wraps up our In the News, episode. Hopefully you all enjoyed listening to this. If you have any of your own thoughts, any questions, bring them to us on Twitter. You can email us. Joe, where do you find us at?
You can find us on Twitter at PastFuturePod. We are Nostalgic Future Podcast on Facebook and Instagram. And you can email us at nostalgicfuturepodcast@gmail.com.
All right. Thanks, everyone. See you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Nostalgic Future Podcast. We'd love to hear from you. Drop us a line at nostalgicfuturepodcast@gmail.com. We may just read your letter on an upcoming show. Follow us on social media, Nostalgic Future Podcast on Facebook and at Past Future Pod on Twitter. Please subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and leave a review to help support what we do. Until next time, remember, the past is the only way forward.
You know what I wanted to ask you, though? But I want to talk about this new Flash coming out where you're going to, you're back as Batman, and I just want to know, what does it feel like to be back in the suit and wear the suit again?
Like riding a bike.
Yeah.
Hey, man, here's the thing I learned. I was so stupid to think that, when I was first doing it, I got in really good shape, which you have to get into shape, because you just have to carry the thing around. And I don't know why I didn't think of this first time. It's easier to be really skinny and not work out because you have more room to work around. The first time I was doing it, the first one, I'm getting ready, I'm working on the bag and I'm doing all this stuff. And Jack Nicholson walks by, who's playing the Joker, and he looks at me and he goes, "What are you doing?" And I go, get working out. And he goes, "What for?" I stopped sweating and I went, "I don't know." And he just walked away. And I thought, he's right.
He's completely right.
Totally right, because you got a suit. What do I need to do? The suit makes me look good.
The suit makes you look jacked.
Yeah.